Secondly, we have interpretation. So when people speak Russian or English, if you want to choose, there is a icon of a globe at the bottom, and you can choose the language that you want. If you have questions, you are absolutely welcome to ask them. Put them in chat, and if we don't have time to address them live, we will address them in writing and in follow-up events. The very final request to all the participants, please, if you can rename yourself, not rename, add an explanation to your own name. Keep your name, but if you can go to the list of participants, you'll see your name. There's a word more, and you can add the name of the organization that you represent. That would be very useful for everybody to know who is who. Еще раз быстренько на русском.
Okay, I'll repeat everything in Russian. For those participants who would like to listen to Russian language, there is an icon of a globe at the bottom of your screen.
I'm very happy to pass the reins of this meeting to Ms. Mathilde Mesnard, Deputy Director of the OECD for Financial and Enterprise Affairs, who will do a lot of work today. She'll do the welcoming remarks, she'll chair the meeting, and will wrap it up as well. Mathilde.
Thank you, Olga. It's my pleasure. It's always my pleasure to be with you with this group from the ACN Anti-Corruption Network in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So my name is Mathilde Mesnard. I'm Deputy Director of the Directorate that deals with business and finance at the OECD, and that includes the Anti-Corruption Division, in which Olga is managing this project on Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So I welcome you all on behalf of the OECD. And this is the meeting of this Business Integrity Group for Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And this is the closing event in a general frame or a general line of meetings of this OECD Global Roundtable on Business Integrity. And this year it was piloted as part of the global relations strategy of our OECD working group on bribery. And we already had the central global roundtable to look at the global trends on business integrity, the standards on business integrity, and the challenges related to business integrity. And this global roundtable was followed by several regional ones for Asia Pacific and Africa. And also it was followed by several thematic discussions on incentive, for example, on incentives for business integrity or non-judicial remedies. And what all these events have shown and have demonstrated is that there is a growing demand for a greater role of government to promote business integrity, and not only by improving the enforcement aspect, that is quite important, and we work a lot on it, but also by providing smarter regulations, providing incentives for business integrity, and also the necessity to improve the capacity of the governments themselves to assess good compliance of businesses. So in this series of meetings, also what we have seen is that the private sector participants, they stressed the need to develop integrity culture in the companies. And this in order to be able to respond to the emerging trends, evolving standards, and including anti-corruption and other governance standards, including, for example, all these ESG discussions that we are seeing growing, especially with the COVID situation. And related to this COVID situation, of course, business integrity is somehow also a precondition for the post-COVID recovery. And there is this big discussion nowadays on how this recovery should be and how we should rebuild, but not going back to the situation ex ante. And we should build back better. And this business integrity discussion is part of this overall, like building back better after the COVID. So we are very happy to have this final meeting of the Global Business Integrity Roundtable, focusing on this region, Eastern Europe and Central Asia, a very big region. I think the topic is very relevant here as it is relevant elsewhere. And we have done a lot of work in the past few years to raise awareness on this question of business integrity in this region. And in doing so, also we have developed excellent partnership with the EBRD, obviously, with the UNDP, the Council of Europe, and OECD. And we have together also supported several very interesting collective actions that will be discussed today. And what we can see from all this work in the past few years is that there is a lot of appetite among the business sector in this region to engage more in this work on business integrity. So we are launching now a new approach to monitoring business integrity as part of the regional monitoring and the country monitoring that is supported by the EU for Integrity program. And we are looking to continue this capacity building together with the EBRD. And we work with the EBRD a lot. We have been working with the EBRD for very long in the region for obvious reasons. So now we'll continue this work. And the idea is that it's a global platform, and we'll somehow we invite our partners to make use of it, make a good use of it. And to this, we hope will contribute to building up a level playing field for all companies operating globally, but also in this region in particular. So now I would like to give the floor to our partners in this ACN project, the European Commission and the EBRD. So maybe I will begin with the European Commission with Ms. Radica Nussdorfer. So Radica, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mathilde. First, good morning to everybody. It's a big pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting us to this event and co-opening it right now together with you. As you know, integrity in business, but actually across the governance area, is of huge importance to the EU, and we are having and wish to have an even more active role in defining it further also in our Eastern partners. This is why we have recently started the EU for Integrity program, which you already referred to, Mathilde, in your introduction, with you as our partner, and of course also with the Open Governance Partnership. In this way, the EU is stepping forward in defining the policy priorities in the region, but also providing financial support for the work. And the activities of this business integrity group, I believe, will contribute greatly to this cooperation and this program. The program itself will focus both on the supply and demand side to strengthen the evidence-based anti-corruption policies and enhance the enforcement of these policies. It will provide a set of anti-corruption performance indicators and also focus on mainstreaming civil engagement in this area. As the current situation in the region, of course, maybe I forgot to stress in the beginning, I work for the European Commission, and I'm the head of sector working on governance and security in the Eastern neighborhood. So I will focus on this region in my intervention now. As far as the current situation goes, of course, rule of law, functioning democratic institutions, open civic engagements are key for the democratic transformation of the region and essential for its socioeconomic development. And corruption actually remains a serious challenge in both public and private sectors. And actually, we believe that it holds back the potential of our Eastern partners. There have been reforms, new legislation adopted in the past, but what we want to see now is this legislation being implemented. So delivering results and increasing the impact so that the citizens' trust in the institutions that that govern them will be increased. Business integrity, as mentioned, is crucial to stimulate economic development. We single out one aspect of this, for example, public procurement as an especially sensitive sector. And in this sense, I would just stress what 3-4 main guiding lines for us. The first one is the need to ensure open civic engagement. I mentioned this already, for enhanced transparency and oversight of anti-corruption reform implementation. Then it's creating a public-private dialogue to identify business integrity measures and commit to their implementation. And thirdly, it is particularly important to develop anti-corruption performance indicators, and heavy work on that has already been going on in the recent past. And just maybe to conclude my brief intervention, I want to put these main principles into, let's say, a larger framework. You may know that in March last year, I wanted to say this year, but it's already last year, we have issued a communication on the future of Eastern Partnership, where we proposed 5 big priorities for the region to focus on. The first one was economy and connectivity. The second one, which is the one where we come in, this topic comes in, was rule of law, credible justice reforms, and efficient public administration. Then we had third one, transition, digital transformation as the fourth one. And fifth one, it was fair and inclusive society, when we want to support youth employment, entrepreneurship, and skills development. Unfortunately, COVID has put a little bit of a stall in us following on this communication. We focused on other things, mainly supporting the region in fighting the pandemic. And we believe that our assistance in this sense was substantial. What we want to do now is to look beyond already the pandemic and, as you, Mathilde, mentioned, build back better. And what we are right now working on is a new package of documents that will follow up on the communication we issued in last March. And our work focuses on 2 big pillars. The first one is investments and recovery. And here we want to see the countries, the region, recover from the pandemic, especially in creating jobs and supporting economic growth. And we are preparing an ambitious economic and investment plan for the East right now. And this plan, we envisage further work with international financial institutions and also EU member states, and use of innovative tools such as blending guarantees, all for, of course, the benefits of citizens, businesses, economic development in general. And the second pillar, where again we come in, is the governance pillar, which is for us the key, the precondition to attract investment. And here we have two elements. One is the strengthening of governance, rule of law, justice reforms, and of course, tackling corruption. And the second one is to create more inclusive and diverse society with this active support to civil society and independent media. So I don't want to go further on that. We are, as mentioned, working on this right now. This package will hopefully be published soon, certainly before the Eastern Partnership Summit in the autumn. And this package will govern, let's say, our work for the next 5-6 years in the region. With this, I will close my intervention. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak here. I wish you a very productive discussion today, and I, of course, look forward to listening to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Radica. Thank you for these introductions and to put this work in the broader context of the Eastern Partnership. And now I would like to give the floor to Miss Lisa Rosen, who is the Chief Compliance Officer at the EBRD. So Lisa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm the Chief Compliance Officer through EBRD, and in that role, I've had a unique opportunity to see the importance of business integrity in creating sustainable and resilient economies, which is, of course, what we all want to see. And the Compliance Office at the EBRD is actually responsible for ensuring that the EBRD conducts its operations with integrity, from deciding whether to commit to a project to monitoring the project for fraud and corruption after it's entered our portfolio. But over the years, we found that it's not good enough to ensure just that the EBRD acts with integrity. We need also to work with governments and businesses that share our values and with whom we can trust. And it's through this holistic approach that the EBRD can ensure that our projects deliver what was promised, and the EBRD can improve the overall business environment as well. And so this is why the EBRD has strongly supported efforts to improve business integrity, whether it be with governments or with our clients. For example, we played an instrumental role in setting up the Ukrainian Business Ombudsman, and we also assisted in the establishment of the Ukrainian Network for Integrity Compliance, acronymed UNIC. But beyond these initiatives, we're also assisting many companies and state-owned enterprises across our countries of operations to improve their capacity on business integrity, whether it be through anti-corruption action plans or targeted events to raise the awareness of our standards. Clearly, more work needs to be done, and we've been really proud to partner with the OECD on its efforts to promote business integrity in the last couple of years. Because in addition to the Business Ombudsman and the UNIC program that I mentioned, we have also collaborated with the OECD on a series of regional seminars that sought to raise awareness and technical capacity. And so we hope to build on this successful collaboration as we start the second phase of business integrity workshops in ACN countries with the goal of identifying targeted issues and providing in-depth knowledge on how to solve business integrity challenges. So my hope that the Roundtable today will create a platform for open dialogue about the challenges we've faced and how we can all work together to solve those problems by sharing our experience about what really worked, what could be improved, and potentially how COVID has impacted it all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It's a very good speech to explain why we are working on these topics of business integrity, anti-corruption, etc., and how important it is. So now, because we don't have so much time and we have a lot of good initiatives that we would like to discuss, present, discuss, etc., I will go immediately to the first session of our meeting. And what we'll do in this first session is first present to you preliminary results from a survey that we are conducting these days. And these are preliminary because we would like to incite you who have not yet answered to this survey to do so, because we'd like to have a more complete answers and to do so by in the next months, in the months to come. So we'll get the presentation of these preliminary results, and then we'll get presentations from various initiatives, business integrity initiatives or projects that are happening in the ACN region. And these initiatives and projects, what they demonstrate is what are the emerging new trends, maybe what are the remaining or rising challenges in terms of business integrity, and also they can demonstrate some possible effective solutions to the issue of business integrity. So we have a lot of excellent presentations ahead of us. I will urge the speakers to remain short, relatively short. I will give you each of you 5 minutes so that we might get some answers and discussions with the audience and among us after your presentations. But first, may I ask Judas Jorkonis, who was in the past anti-fraud advisor in Ernst & Young in the Baltics and now a consultant for the ACN project. We are very lucky. So you will present these findings and explain a little bit maybe more on the background of this survey and what you are trying to achieve with it. So Judas, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mathilde. Yes,
no,
thank you very much.
7.
Mathilde, yes, I've been fighting for the 7 minutes because the first set of slides, I had some around 100, and I thought that I will take the whole floor here, but I squeezed it in. So please wait for the audience to have the full survey there. I am sure that we will have much more interesting facts for you to share. So without further ado, firstly, thank you very much to OECD colleagues to have me here. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to continue the survey that we have started back in 2014 and then had the released first issue in 2016. So, and this is what I will do, try wherever this is possible to compare the results between 2016 and 2021, right? So, yes, so let us start with the results. On the opening remark, just let me put it so and say that we are covering Eastern Europe and Central Asia. We had multiple questions. Some of them were targeted to yes, no's. The other ones were rating type of questions from the scale to 1 to 4, which indicates in most cases light or strong. We on purpose made it 1 to 4, not to have a middle, that there would be a decision point whether you are onto more positive trend or more negative one, right? And the respondents were the same as we had 5 years ago. We did have governments, we did have associations and companies there as well, right? Jumping to the results themselves, let us start with the governments. And the first question that we asked our governments were that, in your opinion, overall, do you consider that your country business environment is prone to corruption? So the overall result is 2.6, which on the scale to 1 to 4 says that, yes, we're like leaning towards a positive assessment, that we are seeing the positive trends. That we're seeing that countries that we have are more prone to corruption, right? So it's a little bit leaning towards the 3. The interesting fact is that if we would deduct 2 countries out of the whole population surveyed, we would have 3.5, right? So the biggest amount of countries are very do see corruption being a problem, being an issue, being a challenge there, except 2 countries, right? 2 of the population said that we're happy with what we have. We have no corruption whatsoever, and we are living in a blessed society, right? So on the provocation note here, I would ask you here, and then put your comments there in the chat box. Who would those 2 countries be? It would be a very interesting, discussion there in the chat. And I was asked Paloma maybe to aggregate the results. We will maybe see, so who are the blessed countries from the population that we are serving, right? So going forward, the second question that we asked was if we have seen the improvement from 2006. And I'm very happy to say that 3.4, saying that the biggest chunk of our governments are very positive. They do see a lot of things happening in the anti-corruption world, and they do see improvement in 5 years. Now, addressing the high-level corruption, we had the very similar questions that we have in 2016, and we do have a very positive feel from the governments here as well. So they, almost all of them say that yes, the laws do address the high-level anti-corruption. The companies can be punished for bribery, so business-to-business corruption can be punished as well. We do have a strong yes that we do have accountability of the specialized anti-corruption investigators and prosecutors foreseen in the laws, and voila, we do have 100% of yeses that all of the countries have the ombudsman's office. They do have the hotlines for the population. So we do have a very, very positive outlook from the governments themselves. The interesting fact is that when we ask guys, so what about the effectiveness? How many reports did you get? How many legal actions did you start, right? How many complaints did you receive on all of these channels, etc.? So staggering 89% said that they either do not have the data to say that and to prove that they are collecting, or they have never seen this to be happening in the world, right? So on one side, we do have a declarative position saying that everything is wonderful, we have no corruption, or we do have a very effective tools. But when asked, guys, show us the proof that, what data are you collecting? This is 89% saying that, unfortunately, we cannot show that to you. Going forward, right, so there was a question about what assistance does the government provide to companies regarding the following areas. And I think that this is natural that 67% came with AML, anti-money laundering. We had some issues with money laundering in the recent years, right? So I think that there was a very big push for the societies to concentrate on that. So no surprises there. 56% ensuring legal certainty, which is good. Then we did have the integrity measures for CEOs, but data analysis and open data availability is at 44%, which for me was striking. If you would remember the previous slide saying that 90% of the countries do not collect data, and here they say to us, but we do give data to the companies. So I really wonder, and this is the next step that we will go into the case studies. So what data is being accessed, right? And what data is being shared with the companies there? Without further ado, on the business associations, right? So business associations, two questions to them. Overall, do you consider the environment prone to corruption that you're working in? 3.1 means like, yeah, more. It's a yes, it's a bigger yes, or really a very strong yes, that the business associations are very worried about the environment they are living in. And they're kind of skeptical about the improvement of business integrity in the respective countries, because we do have, maybe we see it, but it's more a no rather than a yes to the business associations. Right. So just to compare a couple of things from 2016, in terms of key business integrity risks, most important to the country, as in 2016, 2021, legal uncertainty and selective approach on the law is number one. We do have as a number one, quite a jump from position number 7 to position number 2, insufficient development of competitive environment, right? So this is very interesting. And I think that this really echoes what Lisa said, right? So business integrity has huge ties with the competitiveness of the countries and the businesses, etc. So I think that this is a very strong message to all of us that we're losing the competitiveness there. The new risk that was popping up here is the obstruction of justice. And then we do have a very similar position, 3 in 2016, 4 now, state capture by business, including illegal lobbying and other forms of influencing state decisions, right? Again, what are the key risky stakeholders that we see? So this is judiciary, politicians, licenses, and customs, right? So I think that the usual suspects are there. No, not too many surprises here, I would say, right? So again, the same question was given on the effectiveness on the integrity channels and the corruption risks for the business associations. And we do actually see there more skepticism from the business associations. So even if business associations say that, yes, we do see internal audits, we do see ombudsman's office implemented, hotlines being there, we do make a lot of internal promotion campaigns, et cetera, but the effectiveness of the channels are highly, highly doubted, right? So again, I'm echoing what was said by Mathilde, what was said by Lisa. I think that the key concentration here is not only to declare, to have the channels, but really think about, so what can we do to make this work, right? So last but not least, the companies, again, the same two questions there. Overall, do you consider your company acting in an environment prone to corruption? 2.9, meaning that yes, they agree that the environment that the companies are working are prone to corruption, not to the very extreme, but it's a positive yes. And whether we have seen the improvement in area of business integrity, it's 3.0, meaning that yes, the situation is not that good as we expect, but we do agree that the positive developments were there. So this gives some positive feeling from the companies there. Now, again, talking about the integrities risks, numero uno, right? The first one, which remains in the first position as it was in 2016, legal uncertainty and selective application of the laws is really the key problem that we're facing. The second position remains the same, insufficient development of competitive environments, right? So the same as comments from my side there. Poor protection of property rights, and last but not least, state capture. So the key 4 risks that we had in 2016 did not change. These are the issues, these are the challenges that the companies are facing throughout the 5 years period. Now, which are the key common suspects that we have? Tax authorities, customs, politicians, SOE, state-owned enterprises, right? So these are the entities or stakeholders that the companies face the biggest risk of business integrity. Now, what type of entities are identified to be most sensitive? So these are the suppliers and vendors. These are the agents and distributors, and these are the clients of the companies. So this is very interesting that the clients do have a quite high ranking this year. So we do see that the B2B corruption is not slowing down, it's just getting worse, right? So this is another focus point I think that we should focus on. And again, I really was skeptical about the governments and the effectiveness of the challenge there. But looking at the companies, they do face the same challenge, right? So the investigations are not that common to be initiated. We do not take the legal actions against other companies if we see the integrity breaches. However, what is positive, right? The companies did respond positively about all of the laws, GDPR, labor law, AML laws, right? That they are not holding them back, but they are helping them to really, work in a better environment. And again, I think that this is another stress point to say that companies do want the support from the governments to have a better competitive environment on their own, right? And this is just a reflection of 2016, that 56% back 5 years said that ABAC laws are weak or moderate, right? So we do have to do more to have the effectiveness of the laws, right? And the question about COVID, I will leave this on the slides. And of course, there were some challenges for the companies to have remote online working, increased social risks. But I also want to stress a positive note here that the company said that on the other side, we had positive impacts, and we do have an improved business integrity via increased use of the technology. So all the Zooms, all the data that we had to address more rigorously has really a positive side effect from COVID that we have. So a little bit of the finalization and the key takeaways, right? I did try to put a dashboard here to see, so what's the temperature there, having the governments, business associations, and companies in 3 blocks. And the key questions: business integrity risks increased during the COVID. Have you seen the improvement through the 5 years? And do we have a corruption-prone environment there? So what do we see? The governments are shining green. They're very, very positive. Everything is quite okay in their eyes. Now, business associations, I would say that are mostly critical and skeptical there. So they're cautious about COVID risk. They're cautious about the improvement that we see. So the challenge, they are pushing for more challenges there. And yes, they see most risks from the business integrity side as well. Companies, they do see a little bit more positiveness there. But yes, the skepticism is there, and the call for action, the call for support is really bigger. Now, what are my key takeaways for comparing the results with 2016? To be honest, I do not see that much of the positive changes, right? So yes, anti-corruption, business integrity is still being too declarative, lack of enforcement, all these measures are, skyrocketing in the survey. We do see that we're, saying that, the governments say that the businesses should do more, businesses wait for the governments to act. So the lack of cooperation is not there. And this distrust atmosphere between the government and business is still there. So from my perspective, I think that only being together, we can do more and better. So thank you very much there. It was very quick, but as I said, I have a lot to say. So I hope that these were the key highlights and you enjoyed the preliminary survey results from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judas. I mean, these are super interesting preliminary results, and that's why we are calling to other companies to join this survey and to give us their answers so that we have a more solid evidence base. It's quite important to understand the evolutions. As you say, there are some key points that remain the same, but you see interesting evolution. And that's in these details that it's important for us to build up and to build our programs. So for us also, you will help us in building better programs, better interventions, better awareness raising, better capacity building, etc. If we get, of course, a better evidence on what are the problems and what are the challenges. So please treat this presentation as a teaser and also maybe circulate this survey in your network so that we get more answers. So now we'll have a very good examples of what you called in your presentation. What can we do to make these channels work? Because we see that most of the channels now do exist, but they are not necessarily used properly or enough, or they are not necessarily effective enough, etc. So now we'll have a series of presentations of interesting initiatives, interesting projects to look at what's happening, what has been happening in recent years and how it is working well, or sometimes what is missing. And first I will give the floor to Lana Sinishkina. You are a partner in the law firm, Arzinger. And you're also, very importantly, a member of the executive committee of UNIC that was mentioned by Rosen, the Ukrainian Network for Integrity and Compliance. So you will share with us an initiative that seeks to create incentive for companies to be more compliant through the approach that is known in the OECD countries as non-trial resolution. So please, Lana, you have the floor for 5 minutes, hopefully.
Thank you, Mathilde. I'll try to keep to my time limits. But first, let me introduce a little bit the UNIC organization. UNIC, this Ukrainian Network of Integrity and Compliance, which has been formed by OECD, EBRD, and Business Ombudsman Council in Ukraine. And we are very grateful because now it's a collective initiative which unites private sector, companies from the private sector, both international and domestic, who operate in Ukraine. And also, UNIC closely cooperates with state-owned enterprises and government bodies to improve Ukrainian environment and develop compliance culture in Ukraine. And now I switch to the topic. Basically, the motto of UNIC is what is right, not what is easier. And governing with this motto, we decided to launch initiative on introduction into Ukrainian legislation, the compliance obligations and institute of monitorship through the deferred prosecution agreements, which is not existing in Ukraine as of today with respect to legal entities. Generally, maybe as you know, in Ukraine and in some other countries of continental law system, the legal entities are not subject to criminal liability per se, but there are some measures of criminal liability which can be applicable to legal entities. In Ukraine, one of such measures can be applicable to legal entities exactly in relation to corruption offenses. But unfortunately, this article of criminal code is not enforced properly in Ukraine. Very few cases of real enforcement on the one hand, and on the other hand, quite a lot of cases of certain ungrounded pressure on business from on the side of the law enforcement bodies in Ukraine. So basically, the law enforcement bodies may interrupt the business activities of the companies, just initiating some criminal investigations and making interviews, down rates, and etc., which is of course not welcome by Ukrainian businesses, and it's not a good sign of investment climate in Ukraine, of course. So our initiative, our idea is to implement the possibility into Ukrainian legislation to conclude the agreement, deferred prosecutions agreement, by which the company which is being prosecuted takes the obligations to disclose all the information they possess in relation to certain case on the one hand, and takes the obligations to implement the real effective compliance system. But the law enforcement bodies, on the other hand, take the obligations to stop the prosecution activities with respect to this company. And in such a way, we hope that on the one hand, we help the businesses to reduce the pressure on businesses in this type of criminal investigations. And on the other hand, we enhance the law enforcement practice itself. Also, it has been mentioned today already that in Ukraine, like in other, also in other countries, there is a very poor quality of compliance systems in the private sector. Unfortunately, we have the makes it mandatory for the companies who go to the public procurements to have compliance systems. But this rule is very of formal nature, and nobody somehow checks what type of compliance system has been implemented by the company. And as a result, we have only, I call it paper compliance in many companies in Ukraine. So we also hope that our initiative will help to make the real compliance system out of paper. And it will be like trigger for the companies to voluntarily implement the compliance programs. With this aim, we engage, and thank you, Olga and OECD colleagues to help us with the experts. So we engage the important experts, former and active monitors who have this practical experience. And also we are now in the process of negotiations with the Ukrainian state body, which is expected to be like the main controlling body if this initiative will be implemented. This is National Agency on Prevention of Corruption in Ukraine. So we hope that they will support this initiative, and we will introduce it to the law. So this initiative will be made through the draft law and set bylaws. And also this national agency will need to have like new powers and new new functions with respect to controlling of the implementing of the deferred prosecutions agreement in the part of compliance. So now I'm finishing because I'm very limited with time, but hopefully I was successful in sharing the idea itself. Of course, it's only now it's only as an idea. We are now promoting it through the different government institutions, and the second stage will be already the draft laws, which we hope to present in the Parliament. And I will share with you the results of the second stage as soon as it is completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lana. It's a very interesting topic on which the anti-bribery working group at the OECD has done super interesting work. I don't know if, Olga, you want to say a few words about that, just for the benefit of all of you. Or I see that there is also Elsa Gopalakrishna in the audience, another colleague of Olga in the anti-bribery division. Maybe you could say just a few words or put in the chat the reference where we could find this work on trial resolutions. Because it's not an easy topic. It's not an easy topic for many OECD countries. I can tell you, if, for example, for my country in France, it's quite new that we could have these. So I think it's worth to read this recent study. Olga, you have the floor, or Elsa, if you want to take the floor.
Definitely we'll put the link to the chat, and also at the very end of the meeting, I will mention that this approach, which is now developing as a new advanced practice in the working group on bribery and all trial resolutions, is included now in our monitoring indicators as one of the advanced steps where we want to lead the countries. But yes, indeed, we're very happy that Ukraine is embarking on this global trend, let's say, that has been started by the working group on bribery. You're muted, Mathilde.
Sorry. So no, thanks, Olga. I'll give the floor to Adam Lewis, who is a principal at the project integrity in the office of the Chief Compliance Officer at the EBRD. And he will share with us a case study, a very interesting case study in a national bank. So I'll let you present these case studies, Adam. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So yes, I work in the Office of the Chief Compliance Officer at EBRD. So in that role, I advise on business integrity risks and the ways that we can mitigate them in prospective EBRD investments. And we also do work proactively with clients on capacity building initiatives during the life cycle of an investment. This case, I'll just take a few moments to present to you. It relates to a financial institution in Central Asia that EBRD was working with. And I've chosen this particular case because it's an example of an investment where there have been integrity-related challenges. And I think, it's often the case that it's when things don't go quite according to plan that we have the opportunity really to learn the most. So to give you a very brief overview, this was a financial institution that the EBRD was involved with for a number of years. Then at a certain point, there was a regulatory inspection by the National Bank, which acts as the regulator of this institution. And this uncovered some quite serious weaknesses in the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing framework, in the internal controls of this institution, as well as some other regulatory breaches. This led to a firm response from the regulator. It included the dismissal of some of the key executives, as well as a monetary fine. So naturally, as I'm sure you understand, EBRD and other investors were very concerned by these findings. And so what we did was we commissioned an external firm to conduct a forensic audit of the internal control framework, specifically looking at anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. And indeed, this audit found that there were deficiencies in a number of areas, such as customer identification, know your customer controls, as well as transaction monitoring, and particularly certain higher risk transactions which have, higher characteristics, potential, red flags associated with them of money laundering. So this audit was undertaken, and on the basis of that, a roadmap was developed to address the weaknesses. These have now been fully implemented to the satisfaction of the regulator. And actually what is now going to happen is that the institution is reappointing the consultant to assess the fully implemented framework for AML-CFT as it exists now, to provide assurance that it's functioning effectively now. So things are definitely moving in the right direction, and a lot of good progress has been made here. And so I would say there are probably two key lessons that we can learn from this example. And I think the first one is that strategic alignment between stakeholders is critical to business integrity and good governance. By here, I mean stakeholders, I mean the investors, I mean the non-executive directors and the senior management. Because often in business integrity and compliance matters, you require patience. It can be a lengthy, iterative process. It requires, resource commitments. And even though good business is inextricably linked to good integrity, it's often the case that there are pressing business needs that are prioritized over longer term compliance initiatives, which can be resource intensive. So I think that's why it's critical that you have strategic alignment between the stakeholders and who so that that the vision of shareholders is going to be implemented by the management of the institution. So that's the first lesson. And I think the second lesson, and it sounds like a very obvious point, but I would say that complacency is absolutely the enemy when it comes to business integrity. And I think particularly in jurisdictions where business integrity culture and compliance culture is not necessarily so well developed, there is always a lot that can be done to improve capacity in these areas. I mentioned that it's resource intensive, but there are some easy wins, and I can give a shout out here to Ludas, who in his previous life at Ernst & Young helped EBRD with a number of action plans specifically for financial institutions to look at their money laundering controls. And I'm not saying that Ludas and his team didn't work hard. It wasn't an easy win in that respect, but it was, it's a relatively efficient and, not very resource intensive exercise. But then the key is sustainability. It's quite easy to parachute in a consultant for 2 or 3 days, but to develop a training plan, an action plan, but then you have to ensure it's implemented. You have to ensure that training is given on a regular basis. And, of course, the internal control framework is not a static thing. You need to be scanning the horizon for emerging threats, new trends, and constantly give yourself assurance that the framework is fit for purpose and that it's adjusted or enhanced, if necessary. So I'll leave it there. I'm aware we're very short of time. So thank you for your attention, and I'm very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very useful, because we do see a lot of cases of issues with AML-CLT, that's for sure, in the region, but not only the region. Once again, all OECD countries are still struggling with some of these issues. So I'm sure we'll get questions, and excellent to get these case studies. So now I would like to give the floor to Leva Lapekiene. Sorry if I pronounce your name not fully correctly. And you are heading one of the oldest collective action in this region that is called Clear Wave Initiative in Lithuania. That is one of the countries, I think, that was the good answer to the question from the initial speaker, which are the countries where probably there are less issues related to business integrity than in others. And you will tell us, Leva, how this initiative is facing new challenges, and also what it does to improve its influence and its impact. So you have the floor, Leva.
Thank you, Matilda. Hello, everyone, dear colleagues and all the like-minded people in the region. I'm really happy to share some news from Lithuania and for sure a collective action initiative Clearwave, which promotes business integrity in Lithuania. Next year we'll celebrate 15 years anniversary. I sincerely hope that we will have an opportunity to eat a real and not a digital cake with our community. However, a recent pandemic period will stay memorable for our initiative in terms of that initiative itself surprisingly demonstrated significant growth. And also we had some new issues and activities appeared. So first of all, really more and more companies started to apply for a Clearwave sign that we provide for the companies who join our initiative. We have now 75 members. And of course, we are constantly striving to get more. The year 2020 somehow seems that mobilized the transparent business community here more than ever before. And also our members demonstrated quite stable actions during pandemic and also were demonstrating quite noxious corporate responsibility actions in the first round of the crisis and pandemic. Innovative companies and also the ones from that we called shady markets, such as catering and auto repair, also took a lead and stepped into our initiative. So, which is very, very good news for us. Just before COVID, we renewed our mission, vision, rewrote our strategy, and for sure, we really would love to see Clearwave symbol becoming as an aspiration of every enterprise in Lithuania. 2020 was also challenging a little bit because of our two members have appeared into the environmental scandals. One company appeared that had been polluting our Coronian lagoon for many years. The other illegally disposed some untreated wastewater into the local river. And membership for those companies was suspended, for one was renewed later. But these two scandals showed us that probably we in the initiative should care not only about tax payment, not only about corruption issues, but maybe also to look what's happening in the environmental protection issues. Some of you might remember that our initiative was formed and developed really organically, with not so much methodologies around on that years, how collective action should work. We started with particular special issue of shadow economy, like widespread practice to hide taxes related with the salaries. And later we expanded our agenda, adding more and more issues and also the questions of the corruption. And hence now we are at the stage that we would like to establish also relations with Ministry of Environment and Environment Protection Agencies to find out and also to talk with our members about the issues and topics which would be important for them. So these are a little bit new horizons in our initiative. For a longer perspective, we think that Clearwave members should be recognized as a confidence builders in the market, of course linked with transparency and fair play, but also maybe with responsible environmental impact. Let's see how it goes. It doesn't mean that our primary problems like shadow economy and corruption is solved. I believe that high hygiene to work according to the laws should be primary and minimal standards that we still ask for our companies and our members. And one short activity, short note for one activity I would like to share, that recently we renewed a self-assessment tool called Progress, which is the tool to check what information companies disclose in the public, what we know about the anti-corruption policy, stakeholders, subsidiaries. And this year, one third of our members participated in this self-assessment tool, and the average score is 30% out of 100, which shows that companies in Lithuania, which declare transparency, still have many things to do with it. However, it's important to note that when we started the discussion that we need something like to have similar tool in 2015, and looking what we have now at the moment, we really made a huge progress during these 5 years. Of course, sometimes we still need to convince companies that accountability and risk management tools are worth to have. But the general attitude in the business community really changed a lot in recent years. So that's my key points and notes I wanted to share with you today. It seems our working model that we developed organically is still reasonable. And during the years, we are really not gaining experience, but also I believe sometimes we can maybe set kind of example for other countries how to make a change in a truly complex issue, such as corruption or reduction of shadow economy and promotion of fair competition. So looking forward for further joint projects that we can all together have.
Thank you, Lieva. I mean, this is really like a good example of how one project or one country can inspire the others. And that's, usually what we do at the OECD. We compare different projects we have, the different laws, regulations, etc., how we implement it, how we enforce them, etc. And the idea is to inspire each other towards the better. So I think Lithuania now, as you know, is part of the OECD, but also it's a good country to have in the ACN to inspire other countries in the region. Thank you, Lieva. So now I would like to give the floor to Ardita Seknaj from the International Chamber of Commerce of Albania. You're the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, and you have been organizing for a couple of years now these Integrity Weeks in Albania, and you're also cooperating with similar initiatives in the Western Balkans. So you will discuss, if I well understand, how there is a growing demand from companies for business integrity activities, and also what are the challenges that the business continue to face in this region, the Western Balkans. So Ardita, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm pleased to be here in this panel. It's okay, I'm heard, yeah. Due to the limitation of time, I just would like to give a short background on the Week of Integrity. The Week of Integrity is a national raised awareness campaign which brings together different stakeholders in the country in order for them to introduce their own projects, initiatives, or ideas that aim to promote integrity as a whole, be it transparency, accountability, responsible business conduct, and any efforts in the fight against corruption. The Week of Integrity takes place from the 1st to the 9th of December, coinciding with the 9th of December, which is the International Day Against Corruption. And in Albania, we have started this in 2019, and this year we are holding the third edition so far. As I have heard from all the previous discussions, it's important to point out that on the topic of integrity and fight against corruption, nobody can work alone. So collective actions and cooperations become like the key word of all these kind of initiatives. And in fact, we have started this Week of Integrity exactly based on a strategic partnership. So we wanted to have on board and have a real commitment to that other stakeholders. We have the public sector with the National Coordinator Against Corruption in Albania, who is at the same time the Ministry of Justice. We have a great support from international partners, the Dutch Embassy in Albania, who has been supporting these weeks of integrities, but also previous support in this area, and the EU delegation in Albania. That has helped a lot to build this program and all this framework in order to make that understandable and approachable by all the other stakeholders. In that perspective, I would like maybe to add here a few insights that why this kind of initiative has value and why this kind of initiative has captured interest from the private sector, but as well from the other stakeholders. We as a business organization, of course, have a target group, which is the private sector, and we work on separate issues and topics with the private sector, of course, but in this case, we are working with all the stakeholders at the same time. It's not a process that starts and ends from the 1st to the 9th of December. It starts from 1st of January, and it continues to the end of the year. Why? Let me give a few reasons for that. First of all, the Week of Integrity is based on personal commitment. Any partner that would like to join the Week of Integrity has to have its own willingness to join that one. And they do based on this. Having this, they take the ownership of their own initiatives and they can build that initiatives even furthermore. We stand on a motto in the Weeks of Integrity, and we say that integrity is the responsibility of everyone. So everyone should take its role and everyone should work on that. It's a voluntary basis, as I mentioned, and also it does not should not have a commercial purpose in it. It's a strong concept. We take and we speak about collective actions and stakeholder communications, but at the very end, we must say that these stakeholder cooperations are not very common practices. So bringing that to our economy, to our society, has been in a certain way a novelty in our market and in our region, and it has been approached good. Also, we have been made possible to combine the strength of all these partners, the strength of the government, the strength of the private sector, of the civil society, academia, and others. It encourages especially the constructive debate. By having so many actors in the play, it does not provide you only one side perspective, but you have these whole perspectives, so people can leave apart the clash of interests and can better understand, enhance this understanding point of view on the common challenges that they might have on the topics of fight against corruption or integrity. Also, this serves as an inspiration. What we have seen is this chain of reactions. Once partners and once businesses have seen other partners joining the Week of Integrity, they have started thinking critically and then have joined the Week of Integrity with their own initiatives, even those initiatives that they have not thought before to be part of that. We have had in the first week 24 members, in the second one 53 members. We expect in this third edition to have more, but important is the quality of their projects, ideas, and initiatives rather than the number. And many of them have had collective actions, have worked together. For economies and for societies that are hybrid democracies, like the case of Albania, let me say, sometimes we go into hybrid discourse and they end up to have hybrid solutions. We have to make sure that we do not keep that standard of level. And the Week of Integrity makes sure that you have a direct contact with the policymakers and each actor speaks with each other openly within the limits of communication, of course, but that you state the challenge in there and you provide concrete and constructive and consolidated proposals, and then you expect to have these consolidated solutions afterwards. And that expectedly and hopefully to build what was mentioned even before, the lack of trust. So through this communication, we try to have this trust coming more evolved. To end of this, and a very important topic that we come to the Week of Integrity is that the Week of Integrity and the debates do not intend, and the focus and the goal is not to criticize anybody. It's just to make the dialogue much more constructive and evolving. And that, in fact, has captured the interest of all the parties to be there. So I would invite any of the participants here to join in their own countries and have the weeks of integrity implemented. It's not that difficult, but it requires patience, it requires strategic partnerships, of course, resource commitments, but the partners will provide that at any time and be sustainable all the time. You need to continue and work all around the year. So in that sense, I will leave on these general terms, and later if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer. So we keep the timing okay, I hope.
Thank you, Ardita. I very much liked your mention of a chain of reactions, and it makes me think about whether we can compare corruption to the pandemic and what is the status of our different initiatives, collective actions. They are like vaccines, or maybe not vaccines, but we need a lot of them. We need chain reactions to maybe achieve this herd immunity that we are dreaming about related to the COVID situation. So now I would like to give the floor to Tayfun Zaman. You're the founder of the Turkish Ethics and Integrity Society, and you're also a business integrity consultant, and you have been a long-standing partner in crime somehow with the ACN. So in our meeting like 5 years ago, you presented already the integrity initiative of the Turkish customs brokers. Yeah. And I understood that you will update us on how this initiative has developed and what it has achieved. So please, you have the floor, Tayfun.
Thank you, Mathilde. Well, yes, we have been partners in crime, and I'm happy and proud of it. So today I'm going to tell you a story about how our own report 5 years ago has changed the life of a company, and how through them it changed, or it catalyzed the integrity standards of an industry in Turkey. Well, 8 years ago, Turkish Integrity Center of Excellence, together with Association of Customs Brokers in Turkey, started a collective action around the business ethics standards of customs officers and customs brokers. One of the partners of that collective action stood out and made its way to our own report 5 years ago as a success story. And from that day on, fueled with the motivation of being in an OECD report, they carried their good practice to best practice, and I will tell you about what they did and what they did differently. As we all know, customs brokerage is one of the rare industries where operational effectiveness of the third party, in this case the customs broker, is so aligned, so interconnected, and so interdependent, I dare say, with the integrity, risk management, and regulatory compliance priorities of the client, of the global client especially. Therefore, I put great value in their efforts. Now let me share my screen with you. I will illustrate what they did differently after appearing on our report as a success story. Well, they established a line of defense integrity risk management system, but with their own interpretation. Of course, the first line of defense is tools that you see everywhere, but what they did differently was their compliance academy. They have established a risk-based two-tier compliance academy, where all employees go through basic compliance and anti-corruption training. But once you are appointed to a global company like BP, for instance, then you have to take the master class and learn all the necessary details of UK Bribery Act before even touching the file of BP. And once, as an employee of this company, you are in that pool, then you are considered as a prospect to give service to other global clients. Therefore, you are also required to take courses in SAP and FCPA as well. So this is how they treated their employees and how they treated their risk-based compliance program, compliance training program. The second thing that they did is this. As you know, the customs brokers, they are highly knowledgeable, they are highly experienced, so they possess they create smaller problems and smaller risks for the company. But once your file leaves the office in the hands of a less experienced field staff, that field staff goes in front of the customs officer, then you are prone to have problems. Well, they analyzed the risks over there, and they saw the biggest risk that will put everything in danger is when the field staff feels pressured by the client or by the company. Therefore, they created this anti-corruption control tower, and they said once the files leave the office, nobody has to, nobody can call the field staff. They have these screens through which they follow the KPIs of every file that goes through every customs office in Turkey. And when there is a red flag, only those guys can react and can call the field staff and ask what's going on. With this, they isolate the field staff who is in front of the customs officer, sweating there maybe, feeling under pressure of success, under pressure of, I don't know, of their own KPIs. Nobody can call them but those guys. Therefore, there is no pressure on them, so they are not prone to additional risks or additional mistakes. And then, as the last line of defense, they have created a business model where they have independent performance monitoring. These auditors monitor and audit all the files, almost all the files of a client. And if there is something wrong with the file, anything suspicious, anything funky, they directly report to the client. And they have created an integrity and sustainability reporting. This report is not like the COP that you give to the UN. This report is given directly to the client. Before they start a business, they sit together with the client. They prepare together a list of risk priorities, integrity risk priorities to be specific, compliance priorities, and sustainability priorities. They create KPIs, and then they start reporting in a fully transparent way to the client, so that the client has the full picture of what's going on in the field and how integrity risks are managed on their behalf by DCS customs brokers. And they also prepare yearly operational and regulatory excellence reports where they give feedback to the clients where they have faced problems, why they have faced problems, how they managed to overcome those problems in front of the customs offices, and what they can do together to mitigate those risks, and how they can create new internal controls to prevent those risks from happening again. So this I think is an inspiring example of how a company can be motivated and can be fueled to create a better compliance to serve their clients in a more compliant and more understanding way once they catch success. And in this case, this success was to appear on our report. So today, they don't have only the best compliance program in their industry and in Turkey. Their compliance program is so on steroids, in the best sense of the word. It has become a tool for them to gain more clients, high-profile clients. Thank you.
Yes, this is an excellent example of how, compliance program could serve the business really in the long-term sustainable perspective. And that's really the message that we should, give to the business, is that it's good for business. It's a good business initiative, etc. So maybe this is thanks to this program that you could answer to the poll at the beginning. That Turkey might be one of these countries that were the best ones.
The government side, although they see this issue softly, the private sector doesn't. The private sector understands how important it is to comply and to understand the compliance priorities of global companies.
Thank you, Typhoon, for updating us on the progress of this initiative. And now, last but not least, we have Katia Lisova, who is working for SIPE. I don't think I need to present SIPE, the US-based Center for International Private Enterprise. And you implement a lot of projects in the ACN countries, and we are working with you on some of them. And you will talk about the Business Integrity Guide and also about some initiatives related to SMEs. So Katia, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Matilda, and thank you so much, Olga and OECD, for giving us an opportunity to make this presentation here at this roundtable. And it's so great to see so many partners, so many familiar faces in this gathering. So yes, SIPE, as Matilda said, it's a US-based organization. We are one of the core institutes of the National Endowment for Democracy and also an affiliate of the US Chamber of Commerce. So we've been around for almost 30 years, and currently we have 200 programs in 80 countries around the world. And out of those 200 programs, 30 are focused on business integrity and anti-corruption compliance. And as many of you may know, SIPE is working directly with the local partners in emerging markets in Europe and Eurasia specifically, which are business associations with the chambers of commerce, economic think tanks, academic institutions, and advocacy organizations. And in the last 15 years, we've captured a lot of interesting examples and made observations supporting our local partners on this business integrity journey. And I have to say that in the Europe and Eurasia region, we specifically focus on really engaging with the SMEs. Small and medium-sized enterprises, as you know, comprise from 70 to 90% of all businesses registered in each of the emerging markets, but they are usually most excluded from whether it's public procurement opportunities and other business opportunities. So our goal is really to support the SMEs through business associations and other business support organizations to make sure that they can use the tool of business integrity and anti-corruption compliance to integrate better into the existing markets, of course, and to advocate most effectively on these issues. So with this in mind, we created a business integrity guide, which we published last year in December, right around the International Anti-Corruption Day. And the goal was to bring life into our work into anti-corruption compliance efforts. This is something that actually Lana mentioned earlier today, that the main challenge we see as we work with our partners on business integrity is that it may turn into that paper compliance, right, in paper products. But what is most important is that there is the spirit, there is an understanding of what is the key. It may not be all components of the robust integrity program is there, especially on the SME level. But what is most important, they are effective tools that would allow the employees to raise certain compliance concerns and find the solutions, know what to do. And it can be an effective code of conduct or something else. So the business integrity guide, what we published on our website, it really strives for that. It's again, sectored around the 8 sessions of the anti-corruption compliance program with 28 specific questions and answers. And so the business integrity leaders can actually go straight to the questions they're most interested in and get the answers there, and maybe some of the references to other resources, that were created by us, by SITE, but also by other partner institutions. And the guide is available in Russian, in Armenian, in Spanish currently, and it will be, thanks to TEED, thank you very much, it will be it's translated into Turkish and will be published later this month. It will also be available in Ukrainian, Bulgarian, and Kazakh languages later in a couple of months. So that's something that we would like all of our partners and everyone, the business community in Europe and Eurasia, use to your advantage. And also, just very quickly, that the guide raises three key issues that we are currently addressing in our programming. One is something that Matilda and many of the speakers already brought up, how to incentivize compliance and ethical business behavior, especially on part of the SMEs. So this is something that our partners are actually collecting the very specific examples of that. What can it be? Reduced interest rate. We are working with banking associations to see what kind of incentives they can provide when they give grants and credits to the business organizations, the companies. So, but also on the public procurement side, what can be done to incentivize ethical business behavior? So this is one line of work, and we would be happy to share our findings later, I hope by the end of this year. The second line of work is really showing that ethical SMEs are possible, right? That they can exist in the markets with systemic corruption. It's very difficult, but they can exist. So we're collecting the examples from each country where we work, Ukraine, Moldova, Armenia, Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, where we're collecting the examples of those SMEs and how they manage to stay ethical in the environment. And the final line of work is what type of collective actions, really what type of partnership with civil society organizations, what kind of alliances help the business associations representing the interests of SMEs to be most effective in supporting their member companies, in introducing those standards in the individual companies, but also do advocacy. So this is all I wanted to say. Just please, I'll share the link to the guide. So if you're interested, go ahead, get it. And please ask us any questions. Again, we are increasing our presence in Europe. So just to be closer to our partners, to have this opportunity to speak, not in the US time. So it's great to see everyone, and thank you so much again. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So let me, thank you very much, Katya. Let me wrap up very quickly this session because I've been a bad moderator. I've just inclined into listening to you because all these initiatives and projects are really interesting and they can indeed inspire us. You can inspire each other with this. And I think it illustrates very well what kind of initiatives we could develop to incitate companies to use the tools, to use the channels that apparently are now in place, as we have seen from the preliminary results of the survey. But the question is to use them better and to provoke this chain of reactions, so that you arrive to a system that is no more like with endemic corruption, as you were mentioning, Katya, but like by the actions of individual actors, but by collective action, we move this situation, we change this situation to a system that is no more endemically corrupted. But it's a big challenge. And other actors that are quite important in this battle, uphill battle, are the ombudsmen or ombudswomen in the region. So we'll have our second session. I will ask Olga to moderate this second session, and sorry, we are giving you back the floor a little bit late, so you will have to shorten the second session and to see what are the progress in the region with these ombudsmen and ombudswomen. So Olga, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Matilda. Of course, you were an excellent moderator. It was the challenge was with the agenda. We had so many speakers because how can you not give the floor to our partner initiatives? So let's try to catch up a little bit of time because we need to catch up about a half an hour. So we will squeeze a little bit next sessions. So session 2 is about business ombudsman institutions, because over the last 5 years, we have seen an explosion of these institutions, a promotion of these institutions all across the region. One of the reasons probably for that is that companies are looking for mechanisms to resolve their issues outside the existing system, outside court system, which is incapable to address these issues. There are different models that were created in the region. Lisa Rosen already referred to the Ukrainian model. There are other institutions which were created differently in other countries. About 2 years ago, we have for the first time met with business ombudsman institutions in Georgia on their invitation. We had a very interesting discussion. And after that discussion, Tatiana Korotka, the deputy business ombudsman from Ukraine, called me and said, listen, we need to continue this debate because it's very interesting. We need to learn from each other and understand how to make those institutions better. So what we did during the COVID year, when we can't travel, but we can read, think, and write, we launched a mini survey of business ombudsman institutions. We developed a questionnaire, sent it to the countries where we have business ombudsman institutions. We received the very last questionnaire only 2 weeks ago. That's why we couldn't prepare a final report for you now at this meeting, but we have some preliminary findings. And I think in this session, we will limit ourselves really with the presentation of those preliminary findings and some immediate reactions. We will have a real in-depth discussion later. We'll have a separate seminar for business ombudsmen where we can discuss, finalize the recommendations and have the report published. But for now, Tatiana, you are also a partner of crime in this project. Please tell us, what did we collect so far as information?
Dear Olga, thank you very much for your kind presentation and certain history about our project. Yes, dear colleagues, I am pleased that business ombudsman communications are becoming a tradition, and our countries are already part of the international economic arena. And this international communication platform also allows us to consolidate efforts to support cross-border business. It would be less effective, definitely, without OECD, EBRD, and EU partners, and I am grateful to them for that. The preliminary results of the study demonstrated not only common features of the business ombudsman institutions. What is more important, there are many directions to strengthen the institutional capacity of the business ombudsman institution in the region. I want briefly outline a few thoughts that we can discuss later when the final report is present. First, the analysis of the institutional forms of the business ombudsman well reflects the evolution of the democratic transformations in Eastern Europe and Central Asia countries. It is interesting to know that business ombudsman institutes in this region created in parallel with the boosting of economic reforms, the liberalization of the business environment, and the demands of the business community to combat the abuse of powers by state bodies. In fact, by creating the business ombudsman institution, the state demonstrates the political will to use all means to support businesses. However, given that political cycles are changing, business ombudsmen must be legally equipped and operationally sustainable to remain effective at all times. Second, despite the various forms of business institution work, state, business focused, equidistant from all stakeholders, the business expects that it will be a prompt, accessible, and objective mechanism. In this direction, there is a potential for improving business ombudsman institutions, ranging from strengthening of powers and ending with the internal work with business ombudsman processes and personnel. I mean, capacity building for personnel. Third, probably, and this is my final comment to this report for now, the more successfully and efficiently the Business Ombudsman Institute works in the country, the more there is a request to expand the initial mandate. The business ombudsman institutions in the ASEAN countries not only provide support to individual companies, but also contribute to systemic changes in governance and creating a strong business culture. In the future report, you will find excellent figures and success stories. What is most important, in my opinion, is the promotion of the idea of integrity by our examples and a critical assessment of direct and indirect impact from business ombudsman institutions' activities in the structured reforms and fight against corruption. I do hope that we could discuss all these details very soon when the report is presented, and I hope that you could add also more ideas how to develop strength capacity of business institutions or business ombudsman institutions in our regions. Thank you very much. From the interest of time, I'll stop on this.
Thanks a lot, Tatiana. Indeed, we don't have a lot of time, but we had several business ombudsman institutions that gave a signal to us their interest to say a few words, to give an immediate reaction to this preliminary findings. We had expression of interest from Kyrgyzstan, from Uzbekistan, and from Albania. There were 2 speakers from Uzbekistan. I would like to have only one. Who would that be, please? You can unmute yourself and speak. No? We don't have Sergei Ponomarev or Nurlan Musuraliyev? Okay, good. We will then have a discussion later. Mr. Eduard Shalsi, Minister of State Protection, Minister of State for the Protection of Enterprises. Yes, Nurlan, please go ahead. The floor is yours. We don't hear you. Okay, I guess we'll have to skip. That was an effective moderation, wasn't it? In this case, we go to Albania. No, great, we're saving a lot of time. And finally, Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, we have Lamia Khuduyarova, no? No, I think today our business ombudsmen are very shy.
We have a question, Olga. We have a question in our chat. Let's discuss it. Thank you, Igor Olikhov. Igor Olikhov asked us, what achievement of business ombudsman institution do you consider to be the greatest one during 2020 and in all of the jurisdictions that are present today? Well, I don't know whether this question to me, but because I am a representative of the Ukrainian Business Ombudsman Council, and I am always ready to talk about our achievements. Probably, Olga, you can somehow evaluate these achievements as you know more in detail about achievements from our partners.
Okay, well, that of course will be the, you will find the details, of course, in the report that we will publish at the second half of the year when we complete the current survey. But if we look at the example of the Ukrainian Business Ombudsman, I would name 2 main achievements of the Ukrainian Business Ombudsman institution. First of all, it's of course the efficiency and professionalism in responding to individual complaints by companies. Of course, I can rely back on Tatiana to provide us the with the statistics of the amount of resources, the amount of money that was returned to the companies by supporting their claims against various infringements by state administration. The second main achievement of the Ukrainian Business Ombudsman is the input that it provided to the systemic improvements in the country. Through the systemic reports that the Business Ombudsman is doing regularly, they address the most acute problems in the country. For example, over the past several years, they did reports on, for example, irregularities in the taxation area. They did the report on abuse of law enforcement powers, and many other reports. And these reports don't stay on the shelf. These reports go to the Prime Minister, to the Cabinet of Ministers, to the respective institutions in the public administration. And we are impressed to see that the share of the recommendations that come from Business Ombudsman institution is being massively implemented. Like the large share of their recommendations are implemented. And this combination of casework with systemic changes is the advantage that we are seeing in case of Ukraine. I actually was asked to speak a little bit in Russian in this case, so I will switch at the moment.
So for all, I will repeat that for all our listeners who listen in Russian. I'm going to say that the results of this survey, of this report, are going to be ready in the second half of this year. So we have now presented only the preliminary part based on the surveys that we have received so far. And but what we can say now is that the main directions, the two main directions of our work, which have been very productive and very successful, we believe, is on the one hand protecting and supporting individual claims from individual companies when there were conflicts or infringements from state institutions, and large amounts of funds of money that have been returned to the companies. And on the other hand, it is the impact, the contribution that we have so far made into the development of the legislation, providing recommendations, etc. But we will be able to discuss these achievements in the second half of the year. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Tatiana. Indeed, it will be very interesting to see the results of your survey, of your study. We founded our institute, Ombudsman Institute, only just before COVID, so we haven't been able to realize what we had planned. We took our time to study existing models and to choose. We followed Ukrainian model. As for our achievements, so far we have managed to reduce the number of complaints that we receive from businesses. As for the issues that we identify, we also provide recommendations. And one of our achievements is that when drafts of legislations are proposed, there are often references to our recommendations. Another thing is that you probably know how our society is transforming, so we keep having to establish new ties with new people in government and power, but we keep working and I think due to our limits in time, I'm going to finish at this, and we're looking forward to hearing the results of your study. Thank you very much, says Olga. Once again, I will ask Lamia if she wants to take the floor, or maybe our representative from Albania.
Okay. I think in the interest of time, we can now stop this very small session. So I didn't help Mathilde a huge amount of tasks. And we can move to the 2 last sessions because we actually have only half an hour and quarter left. Mathilde, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Olga. Thank you, Olga. So now we are at the session 3, which is one of my favorite topics on state-owned enterprise integrity. And we all know that historically, obviously, state-owned enterprise represent a large share of the economies in this region, in the ACN region, for obvious reasons. And also we know that they represent high risk of corruption. And this is true in this region as everywhere else globally for a lot of reasons, including because they operate a lot in heavily regulated sectors. Of course, they operate close to the state and close to the political systems. And this closeness is also prone to sometimes inappropriate links. This is the reason why the OECD and its Committee on Corporate Governance, who has a specific also working party working on the governance of state-owned enterprises, has dedicated a lot of attention to that, and recently has adopted guidelines on anti-corruption and integrity in SOEs. So, this network, the Anti-Corruption Network, will in the future promote the implementation of these guidelines in the region because it's a super relevant work. We are already doing a lot of work on this topic in Ukraine specifically, but there is a lot to do in other countries, and it's a very solid work. And to do that also we'll partner obviously with our usual partners, including the EBRD. So in this session, that will be short and mostly for information, I'll ask my colleague Alison McMakin, who is an expert on SOE governance and who has contributed, if not all, the pen for these integrity guidelines, to present these guidelines to us. And after I'll ask the EBRD, Matthew Hudson from the Office of the Chief Compliance Officer to discuss some ongoing EBRD project related to SOEs. So please, first, Alison, you have the floor to present the guidelines.
Thank you very much, Mathilde. Good morning, almost good afternoon all. Excellent, Mathilde. Thank you for your introduction, because in the interest of time, I was actually going to skip over a lot of the background that you just gave. So thank you very much. I wanted to say, let's take it as a given that we believe, or at least on our end at the OECD, we believe that SOEs have a critically important role to play around the world, in fact. And controlling corruption in the SOE sector is important. Now that's, I'm happy to discuss that in more detail offline or even debate that, but we're going to take that as given for the purposes of my brief intervention. And I would jump right to the tools. So as Mathilde mentioned, in 2019, we issued guidelines on anti-corruption and integrity for SOEs. We call them the ACI guidelines because it's a long title. And these guidelines, I mean, they were developed in response to requests of country delegates to focus not only on corporate governance of SOEs in detail, but also the specific topic of anti-corruption and integrity. And so we have a lot of almost decades of research on corporate governance and increasingly on integrity that back these guidelines, not only in the fields of corporate governance of state-owned enterprises, but also anti-corruption as well as public sector integrity. And I'm going to get to why we triangulated those three spheres. But the guidelines were essentially designed to respond to key vulnerabilities that we see the SOE sector as susceptible to. And those four vulnerabilities, we would say, SOEs are most at risk at when, one, there's a general lack of integrity in the public or political sphere. Mentioned earlier in the first intervention, based on the survey results, we still see a risk of state capture. And this is hugely problematic for the SOE sector more broadly. Two would be a lack of professionalism in the exercise of state ownership. So this is on the part of the state, there's a lack of professionalism, either an unwillingness or a lack of capability to be a professional owner. SOEs are particularly at risk, of course, when mechanisms at the company level are either insufficient. So as was mentioned earlier, there's a lack of implementation, or they're not as effective as they could be, or they're entirely absent. Usually it's the former, though, that there are a degree of company controls and preventative mechanisms, but they're not effectively implemented within the company. And then finally, I mean, these are broad categories, but finally we see SOEs particularly at risk when there's a weak enforcement within their operating environment more broadly, which is of course a topic covered by Olga's team in great detail. But also not only when there's weak enforcement, but weak enforcement is applied to SOEs. So perhaps SOEs are safeguarded from enforcement or the disciplining factors that private firms are subjected to because of their state ownership, which can be problematic as well, of course. So in response, the guidelines try to tackle each of those. We're looking at prevention, detection, enforcement, both at the state level as well as the company level. And the basic premise of this is that we can't expect SOEs to promote integrity, to reach the highest standards of integrity if those in positions of power don't wish that to be so. So this is the essence of what we're trying to tackle. Of course, ideally of every premise of the guidelines are implemented, but they're very aspirational in nature. Not one country can say to have implemented all across the board, but we do have good examples, country examples for each provision, if that makes sense. But I want to highlight two in particular that always come up and I believe are important to this region as well. That is one, having a clear rationale and objectives for state-owned enterprises so that we know and we can see when instructions are irregular. And so that is clear. We have a basis for understanding what SOEs are meant to do. And then it can be clearly understood when they're doing something they're not instructed to do. And this helps limit the undue intervention in companies. And secondly, critically important is professional and autonomous boards. That's a degree of independent members managing the presence of politicians on boards or even civil servants and ensuring that they can fulfill their role also importantly in overseeing management. And that should be a board responsibility, not a state responsibility, but that's often not the case. So I just highlight those two. Again, they're aspirational, these guidelines, so countries are looking for support in implementing. We have now issued an implementation guide that actually accounted, and we have over 160 country examples in there. So there are examples for every single recommendation we make that are hopefully of use. We also seek to answer common questions that come to us, and we go into more detail there too. We provide key definitions and more. So I'm going to drop a link into the chat, and we invite you to take a look both at the guidelines and the implementation guide when you have time. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm not sure we have time now, but even offline, because yeah, we encourage these tools to be used. They're at your disposal. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Mathilde. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alison. You have been very disciplined because I know that you could talk for 1 hour about these guidelines. So I really invite all of you to look at the link that Alison is providing and to look at our website at the OECD on the growing work we are doing on SOE integrity that I repeat is probably hyper relevant in the region. And now I will give the floor to Matthew Hudson. You're principal in the project integrity in the Office of the Chief Compliance Officer at the EBRD, and you'll present a project related to SOEs that you are currently doing. So please, Matthew, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mathilde, and good morning, everyone. The EBRD has been and is increasingly active in working with Ukrainian SOEs to build robust anti-corruption compliance frameworks, and through this, improve business integrity in this important sector. In the time available today, I plan to provide a brief update of key recent developments, ongoing work streams in this area, and new and continuing challenges and lessons learned from this experience. In October 2020, the EBRD and the Ukrainian government signed a memorandum of understanding pursuant to which Ukraine committed to strengthening, with EBRD support, corporate governance in the state sector in line with OECD recommendations, and to implement robust anti-corruption and procurement controls at state entities. The signing of the MOU is significant, for whilst the EBRD has been actively and substantively engaged in corporate governance reform With strategic Ukrainian SOEs for many years, this is the first time that the bank has agreed an overarching, unifying framework through which to approach its anti-bribery and corruption capacity building efforts in Ukraine, or in any country of operation for that matter. The pilot and litmus test for the reform program envisaged by the MOU will be Ukraine's state road agency, Ukravtodor. Work has recently begun on the design of a comprehensive anti-corruption action plan aimed at implementing in the months and years to come robust internal controls, policies and procedures to prevent bribery and corruption and improve business integrity in the road sector more generally. It's hoped that this work will become a high-profile model for similarly ambitious reform programs at other SOEs in Ukraine. The ACAP at Ukravtodor is a good example of how the bank has approached comprehensive anti-corruption compliance reforms at key state entities in Ukraine and elsewhere. Several ACAPs of this nature, which aim to embed over time a company culture that values and promotes business integrity, have been completed or are at an advanced stage, and others are at earlier stages. The bank requires these action plans when it has identified serious integrity issues in respect of a potential bank client. Robust anti-corruption reforms, usually coupled with project-level protections, are a credible mitigant, both in the sense of ensuring that our funds don't get lost to corruption in the course of the project, but also to reduce the risk of wrongdoing recurring in the future. Of course, they also fit into the bank's broader transition mandate under the well-governed quality. Importantly, the bank's ongoing relationship with the client and disbursements of the loans are conditional on the successful implementation of key reform milestones. Our work in Ukraine and other countries for that matter has revealed a number of frequently encountered challenges and lessons learned. A high-level summary would include the following. Developing and implementing effective ABC governance measures in SOEs is intrinsically linked to the success of broader corporate governance and sectoral reforms. For example, an appropriately empowered and independent integrity compliance function depends on a sufficiently independent and qualified board that provides top-level support and oversight of the SOE's risk and compliance function. In our experience, there is often a discernible gap in understanding key compliance terminology and principles of ABC compliance. To the extent that there is a compliance officer or function, it is often of a check-the-box nature rather than a broader values-based system. Improving this understanding is a prerequisite to success of more concrete action items. Management buy-in and communication is critical. Tone from the top can be misunderstood as doing what your boss tells you, rather than pushing values of integrity and transparency down through a company. How management develop these values and make them a universal part of the company's everyday work is key. Training is a major piece of this. A final point to note is that in our experience, it's critical to tie implementation of reforms to disbursement of funds. Leverage really matters. A corollary to this is the need for institutional will to hold the line in terms of reforms for disbursements, which can be very challenging. Anti-corruption action plans are not the only form of the EBRD's assistance to SOEs in the area of business integrity, and there are a number of other discrete work streams recently completed or underway in the area of ABC compliance and business integrity in Ukraine. For example, we are working with a large SOE to undertake its first comprehensive corruption risk assessment, which will guide the establishment of a permanent and independence compliance function in the company in the coming years. The EBRD positions itself and very much sees itself as a credible and long-term partner to the compliance teams at major SOE clients. We want people to reach out to us when they have questions and issues, and they frequently do. We have organised and delivered ad hoc workshops on topics of interest to various compliance teams, and at the request of the CCO of one SOE, we recently provided train-the-trainer workshops to group compliance staff after it was identified internally as an area for improvement. I appreciate this has been a very quick tour through the EBRD's work in Ukraine, but again, in the interest of time, I will finish there. I'm of course willing to answer any questions now or offline. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And it's quite important what you mentioned, and it's quite important that the EBRD and actually the whole ecosystem of international organizations present in Ukraine are working together towards the same aim. And it's quite necessary given what is at stake and given the scale of the problem. And we all know, I mean, people working in Ukraine, that there are some recent events that are not that positive. and where we need to join forces to try to impact and influence the decisions that are made at the highest level, I'm afraid. So without further ado, I will go to the concluding session. I do think that the information provided in this session would be useful for what we will be discussing in the next session. That means what are the next steps for the ACN project. And so in this session, I will first give the floor to Olga, and she will present in particular business integrity performance indicators that we are currently building, and maybe also what are the next steps in the ACN project. So Olga, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot, Mathilde. I would now like to ask Paloma to put my slides on. Thanks a lot, Paloma. And while we were listening to the presentation from Alison and from Mats, I was thinking of the Ukrainian Network for Integrity and Compliance, unique, because there were a lot of, there's actually quite a few state-owned enterprises that are desperately trying to join and to become part of this initiative, because they are looking for this expertise on developing compliance function in their institutions. Okay, that's the first slide, and what I will tell you about is the so-called Istanbul Action Plan Monitoring Program, which is the one of the main activities of the Anti-Corruption Network in Eastern Europe, Central Asia. Many countries know that either as subjects for this monitoring, and the subjects are Moldova, Ukraine, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and the Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Mongolia. These 10 countries are being monitored by us, and many other experts from other ASEAN countries are taking part in this program as peer reviewers. They are conducting this review. Many of you know this program because we've been doing it since 2003. And this year we are continuing the 5th round of monitoring, but we're going to do that in a very, very different manner. The two main elements of this new approach and new methodology is that it will be based, this new monitoring round will be based on performance indicators, those performance areas you now see on the screen. Can you show the previous or the next step, Paloma, please? Because it's not working. Yeah, that's enough. That's fine. What does that mean? In the past, we were assessing each country against its own performance in the past. For example, in Armenia, there was a certain progress in anti-corruption policy 5 years ago. So now when we start monitoring this year, we will look into the improvements compared to Armenia 5 years ago. That was very important in the initial stages of this monitoring. However, now we have heard from countries that they want to have more clear guidance from us as to what they need to achieve in order to be named compliant. They wanted to have specific benchmarks that will guide them towards further reforms. This will also help us to have a more objective monitoring and to compare countries to each other. So what we did over the last 2 years already, it was a lot of work to develop this whole methodology. We agreed with our countries on the list of performance areas that you now see in front of you. These are the areas that we will be monitoring over the next 5 years. This monitoring will be annual. So every time we go to the country and there is some negative assessment of a certain area, there is a possibility next year to improve the performance by the country. So that we hope that this will give a little bit more pressure to the countries to rush and to improve their performance. The areas that we have selected are pretty narrow in the sense that in the past, we looked at many other issues like civil service reform or internal financial audit, access to information, etc. Now we have narrowed it down to the key functions of anti-corruption institutions. And as you see, we included one performance area that is called PA8, which is called business integrity. Paloma, let's go to the next slide already. Next one, please. Next one. Even if it's beautiful pictures. So how will this be working? We developed in total, no, please, can you go to the first indicator? And one before. Okay, great. So in total in this performance, yes, it's jumping. They're alive because it's a pilot. You know, they're not final yet. We still have to finalize them, and the slides are a little bit alive. So in the performance area business integrity, we have 5 performance indicators, and they each look at a different target group. So the first performance indicator looks at the private sector companies listed in stock exchanges. It's a little bit linked to the, it's quite actually linked to the OECD standards for governance of multinational enterprises. And the standards that we are using here are actually derived from those bigger standards that OECD is promoting for MNEs globally. The main focus of this first indicator is on the role of boards of directors of listed or publicly traded companies in the management of corruption risks. So we do want to see that in our region of operation, boards do have this function at least required from them, let's say. We know that our part of the world is not very developed yet in that area, so we know that many countries do have corporate governance codes, but they're not very strongly implemented. There's still a lot of tasks that our countries have to do to build corporate governance of privately owned companies. But we already in advance want to make sure that those corporate governance codes will include the requirement for the boards to look into the corruption risks as part of the integrated risk management. And we also want to see that there's some institution in the country that controls how how these private sector companies are implementing this requirement to the boards. So these would be the 2 relatively light indicators for the region, but I must be frank with you and say that we are expecting to have a lot of non-compliance in this area because that's a new area, that's still a relatively underdeveloped part of the legislation in our world. So that's the first indicator. The second indicator deals with the new hot topic of beneficiary ownership. Disclosure of beneficiary ownership of companies registered in the countries. In fact, this area is some of the countries in our region have done quite some good progress. There's a lot of movement towards creating such registries and opening them for public. There's a bit less progress in verifying information about a beneficiary ownership. So this particular indicator is actually asking for several steps from companies. We call the steps benchmarks. So first of all, we want to make sure that governments have such registers in place and that companies are required to disclose information to this register online, and this register is central. The second requirement is that the information provided and published online should be machine readable so that the civil society has the potential for scrutiny of this information. We also want to see that the beneficiary ownership information is verified by public authorities. And in the guide that we developed in addition to these indicators, we provide examples of how this can be done. 2 more benchmarks here is that financial institutions and designated non-financial businesses and professions are obliged to use this information in their operations. And finally, that there are sanctions, of course, as always, dissuasive, administrative or criminal sanctions for violations of disclosure requirements, and they are applied in practice. To give you an example, when we go to the country and we are now piloting these indicators, we ask government to provide us information and proof of implementation of these benchmarks. We look into those registers online. We look at what information is there, whether it's readable. We ask for information about sanctions for the last year to see if they were applied, etc., etc. And then if the country can prove that the requirements are in place, it gets the score. If there is no such provision, it doesn't get the score, and it gets into a more red zone. Paloma, let's move to the next slide if we can. So two next indicators are about the issues we discussed today. It's about incentives, and it's about mechanisms to address companies' concerns. We were talking a lot that it's important to have incentives. It's a new area. It's not yet entirely clear for governments, not only in the ACN countries, but also in the OECD, what kind of incentives governments can provide to improve performance. Clearly, it's not about giving benefits for living by the law. We are talking about additional incentives, such as, for example, different green flags for compliant companies and different administrative procedures, simplifications of different проверки, what is it? Inspections, lost between languages, and other benefits. Again, in the guide, we provide examples that companies can use to see what we're talking about. And the next indicator is about the channels that companies can use to complain about bribe solicitation or other violations, and the mechanism that can give them protection of their legitimate interests in such cases. These could be business ombudsman institutions. Indeed, we have now 7 in our region out of 10 countries that are undergoing monitoring. Other countries are considering such mechanisms. We are very open to look at various models, but what we want to see is that these mechanisms provide these 5 sets of results. First of all, it has to be a dedicated institution that should be receiving such reports from companies that are either related to corruption or that are related to other conflicts with state administration that is not directly corruption, but can lead to corruption or hide corruption. And that this mechanism is not just receiving those complaints, but also is reviewing and helping company to deal with the situation. The second benchmark here is that there is a wide perception of stakeholders that this institution is impartial and that it operates without undue pressure. It's quite a difficult indicator to measure, benchmark to measure, because you need to know who to talk to get this this measure verified when we monitor the country. So we actually encourage also business ombudsmen and similar institutions to do their own surveys and to do their own studies and how their clients respond to them and how they are perceived by the private sector. The third benchmark here is that this institution has to have powers and resources to review individual complaints and to provide, to resolve concerns. What we mean here is that, of course, there can be an institution that receives the complaint and then it can send it to a law enforcement body or to somebody else, but it doesn't have its own powers or its own resources to go and protect the company, and the other parts of governments will not listen necessarily to this institution. So again, you can look up in the guide for more details on what is required here. And the last 2 benchmarks here are about the issue we already discussed, about the role of these institutions in changing the systemic problems, improving the systemic problems. We would like to see somebody, it can be this institution or any other, it can be a business association or any other institution that does systemic reviews of business-related problems and provides recommendations to the governments. And we want to see these recommendations being implemented. That's the final indicator here, final benchmark here. And now the last slide, and that would be the last one for me. If we yes, we managed, and it stays in place. So this one is about state-owned enterprises, as we just discussed. It's a huge problem in our countries. So we decided to focus on 10 largest state-owned enterprises to be able to dig a little bit in the monitoring program and to see what's happening inside these state-owned enterprises. And we follow very much the guidelines that Alison presented here. We just only picked up those which we think are more or less measurable in our part of the world. So first, we want to see that the supervisory boards of those 10 largest enterprises are established through merit-based and transparent nomination process. First challenge. The second challenge is that these boards have the mandate to do risk management. And we want to see it there at the reports of their meetings to see that they're indeed looking into the reports from audit committees and deliberate corruption risks. We want to see that the chief executives, the CEOs of those 10 largest SOEs are also appointed through merit-based process, and importantly, they report to the boards and not to the government, directly to the ownership entity. The next one, we would like to see those SOEs undergoing external audit based on international accounting standards. In fact, this is one of the areas where there is some progress in the region. Others are a bit less. We would also like to see that the boards of the SOEs are regularly looking into the reports of audit committees and those external reports. And final requirement is about disclosure. We would like with this benchmark to promote greater transparency of state-owned enterprises, and we encourage them to disclose their objectives as per the guide that was introduced by Alison. We would like them to disclose their financial and operating results, material transactions, and remuneration to the board members and key executives. So these are our indicators. They are still draft, as I said, because they were jumping so much. What we are doing right now is we're doing a pilot. We are testing all those 13 indicators in the 5 countries that are supported by the EU for Integrity program. That includes Moldova, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Ukraine. In October, we will finalize the pilot, and after this pilot, we also will review this methodology and finalize the indicators, and then we'll be applying them for all 10 countries undergoing this program for the next 3-4 years. So I very much call upon you to promote them, to look into them, to collect data, because when we come to your countries for monitoring, we're asking the government to give us answers to the questionnaires, but we also ask for business community to provide feedback to us. And it's very important to have both views in order to form the objective view of the country situation. And I think I forgot one last slide. Yes, that in fact, not in this indicator 8, but in indicator 10, which looks into enforcement of liability of legal persons, we do have one of the benchmarks where we call the countries to consider introducing non-trial resolutions, as Lana was presenting as the initiative in Ukraine. So, for example, if in a year or 2, this initiative together with the Ukrainian government will be implemented, this will definitely be an area of plus, and then Ukraine will go into green here. Thanks a lot. That's all on my side, and we will definitely be more in touch on this issue with you.
Thanks, Olga. And now I will ask Chawen Q from the EBRD, the Assistant Director of Investigations in the Office of the Chief Compliance Officer. Maybe Chawen, if you could present us this second phase of the joint project we have with you between, the ACN, OECD, and the EBRD.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mathilde. And I think we've heard so much about the great work that the OECD has been doing, and also a lot of the initiatives that the EBRD has been doing in conjunction with the OECD in order to promote business integrity in this region. And I just wanted to talk about something that we have been working on for a number of years now, and we hope to really kick off in 2021. So as we've heard in earlier sessions, in 2016, there was a business integrity study that was conducted, and Ludus provided us with the benchmark of that, as well as the updated business integrity survey. Based upon that, the EBRD and the OECD partnered up with other organizations such as the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in order to start doing a series of regional seminars with the target of raising awareness and building technical capacity on business integrity risks. As many people have mentioned, there was at that time less awareness of business integrity issues. And, it was thought that through these regional seminars, we could bring the issue to the forefront of many businesses' minds. And we held a series of regional seminars in order to do that. Having done those series of regional seminars, we found that there was a huge appetite for greater information and greater knowledge about how to actually practically implement business integrity within their organizations, whether that organization is an SME, a private organization, a governmental institution, or a state-owned entity. And it was based upon that demand that we started to plan a second phase of the business integrity seminars. We really found that even though there was this great appetite for information, we were unable to provide the detailed and in-depth knowledge that was necessary in order to really implement business integrity. Because obviously, what the needs of a particular institution will be very different depending on where it's located geographically, what its economic situation is, what the political situation is as well. And it was based on that we decided to come up with a second phase of these seminars. And in this second phase, we would create a more targeted program, delivering specific and practical advice. So, we have now put together a program, and we are now trying to figure out where we are best able to deploy our resources. And that's where our partnership with our member governments comes in, really, because this program will be a partnership with the governments as well. Whereas the EBRD and the OECD will be able to provide funding and expertise for international speakers and trainers, and where the EBRD and OECD can provide the structure and the program of training and technical capacity, we really need our member, the member governments and member organizations to identify where they would like the additional support, and also to have the connections to bring together the relevant participants. So for instance, whether the governments or particular organizations feel that a weakness is SME integrity, or whether it's in third-party due diligence. This is where we would like to get the feedback in order to have to know where we are best able to deploy our resources. And as Olga mentioned, the monitoring reports that ACN has been doing are a great opportunity to identify potential areas of improvement in your systems, and also potentially using some of the other tools that we've mentioned today from our honorable speakers could help you identify where we could potentially help in creating a program for improvement in technical capacity. I just wanted to do a quick introduction, as I know we're limited for time, and there may be other interventions that may develop some of the ideas that I've spoken about today. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chair Wen. It gives us an idea about what we are how we are getting organized to pursue this program on business integrity in the coming years. And yeah, I would like to open the floor for other partners to step in and tell us a little bit what they have in their pipeline in terms of projects and initiatives to improve business integrity in the region. I don't know, I don't see any hand raised. But really, I mean, we have 5 minutes left, so it's maybe Iris from the OSCE. Yes, you have the floor,
Thank you so much,
Iris.
Mathilde. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation for today. This was extremely interesting for the work that we are doing. The sessions have been quite insightful and very relevant to most of the work that, as Olga specifically knows, the OSCE does in good governance. Our office is currently working on to update a comprehensive best practice guide for a positive business and investment climate in the OSCE region, with a special focus on latest developments in the field of digitalization and post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Through the guide, we are aiming to support our beneficiaries in OSCE participating states in improving the domestic business climate and promoting overall investment through the provision of practical recommendations to experts, policymakers, government officials, and opinion makers. And we see a lot of overlap in this area. As many of the topics covered here today, in which OECD and partners have worked and are working, are directly relevant, and we would like to include some of them in our guide. We believe OSCE can serve as an amplifying platform for the excellent work and analysis that has already been carried out by OECD, EBRD, SIPE, and other partners. And we would love to discuss at some point in the future how we can do that in practice. I also wanted to mention our continuing work on improving good governance through the use of open data and digital platforms in Central Asia and Southeast Europe. After organizing capacity building webinars last year during the pandemic on the use of open data to combat corruption and support post-COVID-19 economic recovery, we continue to focus on the use of digital tools. And this year we plan to look at how digital tools can prevent corruption in, for example, public procurement processes, public-private partnerships, state-owned enterprises, etc. There will also be a focus on beneficial ownership. Thank you so much again for this excellent workshop today, and we look forward to our continued and close cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris from the OSCE. Maybe some other partners from the UNDP, Council of Europe, would like to take the floor or not. We have like 3-4 minutes left, so anybody else that would like to react to what was presented by Olga and Chaiwell? No. So in this case, I will just wrap up the discussion. I mean, we had 2 hours and a half to discuss a lot of different initiatives on that aim at like raising awareness on business integrity, but much more now. I mean, really improving de facto business integrity. We have seen with the preliminary, I have a problem with preliminary results of the survey that, yeah, the glass is half full, half empty. There are some progress if we compare with the survey of 2016, and especially because most of the channels or the tools are in place, but they're still like, we're still missing like effective use of them and effective enforcement, etc. And we have heard about a lot of different initiatives focusing on different aspects, different sectors, different tools, how they are effective in raising the bar, in helping the business integrity to improve. And we have also had a very short discussion, but still a discussion on the role of ombudsmen in also helping at the same time individual businesses in specific issues they might encounter, but also helping improving the overall framework for business integrity. And we have had a small, I would say, amuse-bouche or presentation on recent work that we have done at the OECD on SME integrity and what the EBRD also is doing in this area. And I think it should be an area of focus for the activity of this ACN project because it's super relevant. And last but not least, Olga presented us what we are doing in terms of indicators for the monitoring work we do for in the framework of the Istanbul Action Plan. And Chiawen presented us also what is in the pipeline in the joint ACN and EBRD project. So we have a lot in the pipeline, and we are very happy to discuss and to regularly, exchange experience, inspire each other with all your different project activities, actors on the ground. One of you mentioned that what is critical is really like to have a strategic alignment of the stakeholders to progress in terms of business integrity. And I think that it is exactly what we are doing here, trying to align the different stakeholders, the different players in the region towards the same objective of improving this business integrity. So with that, I will just close the meeting of today, informing you that the ACN Secretariat will circulate a summary report of this meeting, and with all the references, and links that were provided in the chat for your information. There will be also a video recording that will be placed on the ACN website. And I would like to thank really warmly all the speakers and all the participants, not only for your participation today, but for the tremendous work you are doing to try to move the needle in this region, which is a challenging region, but fascinating one. So we are very happy to be part of this journey towards better integrity and less corruption. It's a difficult journey. It's an uphill battle, but we see that there are really some progress being made. So let me thank you, all of you again. And maybe Olga, if you want to add something or something that I forgot to mention in terms of the next steps or next meetings.
No, I think you've said it all, Mathilde. So next year we hope that there will be another global forum of the OECD, and during that forum we will have the global roundtable on business integrity. We have 1 year, and then hopefully by then we'll have even more interesting stories and examples. So we'll definitely have a session there. Be prepared for next March. It will be in March, I hope. And otherwise, I think thanks a lot. I personally enjoyed the discussion. It's little time, too many speakers. Sorry about that. Thanks, Mathilde, for the excellent sharing and pulling that together. And also thanks to the interpreters.
And so thanks to the interpreters and to the Secretariat and Olga's team, everybody behind Olga, like making this possible. And so I hope that next year we could meet maybe a little bit more physically in person and not only virtually. I mean, it's very convenient to be able to organize virtual meetings, but it's very nice to see people for real. So let's hope that next year we'll meet in person. And I just wish you all to be in good health and to be protected very soon by the vaccine against this COVID virus. So stay safe, all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.